We went camping in June. It was just me, my 14-year-old son Caleb, and my 9-year-old daughter Lila. My wife had to stay home for work, so it was going to be a dad's weekend in the forest. I grew up camping, and I wanted my kids to have the same kind of memories I did. Pitching a tent by the fire, roasting marshmallows, telling stories under a sky full of stars. We picked a spot way up in the northern woods of Michigan, about 4 hours from our home. A friend from work told me about this hidden campground near Lake Solomon, which isn't on any map I've found. Just some old trails and a few worn-down clearings in a forest that feels old. Ancient, almost. I should have taken it as a red flag when he said it was perfect for getting lost in nature. We got there on a Friday afternoon. The drive was long, and the last hour was just dirt roads and trees closing in from both sides. No other cars, no cabins, no people, just us and a sea of green. I'll admit, when we finally found a spot to set up camp, it was beautiful. The trees were tall and thick, filtering the sun into soft, golden patches on the forest floor. We pitched the tent near a shallow creek. The kids chased frogs. Everything felt peaceful. That first night was uneventful. We built a fire, roasted hot dogs, and made s'mores. Caleb told some spooky story he read online. Lila giggled the whole time, begging him to stop when he got too creepy. It was perfect. But the second night is when things went wrong. It started with the smell. Just after sunset, this horrible odor rolled in like a wave. It smelled like something had died nearby, wet, rotting meat. Caleb actually gagged when it got strong. I walked around our campsite with my flashlight, trying to figure out what it was, but I didn't find anything. No animal carcass, no garbage. It was just everywhere, and then gone. It's probably a dead animal in the woods, I told the kids. We're in nature, remember? We tried to ignore it. The kids went into the tent around 10 p.m., and I stayed up by the fire for a bit, watching the embers drift into the night sky. That's when I heard the first sound. It was distant, faint, like a whistle or a moan coming from deep in the trees. I paused, holding my breath. There it was again, low, drawn out, almost like someone calling, "Hey!" I called out, "Hello?" thinking maybe a hiker was nearby and lost. No answer. I stood up, holding the flashlight, trying to locate the direction. The firelight behind me cast huge shadows into the forest, and I had this horrible sense that something was watching me just beyond the tree line. The sound stopped. Everything was quiet, too quiet. No bugs. No wind, just silence. I backed up to the tent and zipped myself in, trying not to scare the kids. I didn't sleep much. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to Caleb shaking my arm. "Dad?" he whispered. "Do you hear that?" I listened. At first, I thought it was wind, but it wasn't. It was talking, whispering, low, raspy voices coming from the woods like a conversation just out of earshot. "What are they saying?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "It sounds like Lila." That jolted me awake. I turned to check, and sure enough, Lila wasn't in her sleeping bag. "Lila?" I hissed. "Lila!" No answer. I unzipped the tent and darted outside, flashlight scanning frantically. "Lila!" Then I heard it, her voice, clear as day. "Daddy?" It came from the trees about 30 feet away. "Daddy, I'm here." Relief washed over me. I ran toward the sound, but something was wrong. Her voice, it wasn't panicked. It wasn't scared. It was flat, calm, like she was reciting the words. "Daddy, I'm here. Come get me." I stopped cold. Something was standing between the trees, just barely visible in the beam of my flashlight. It looked like Lila. Same height, same clothes, but she was standing too still. Her arms hung stiffly at her sides, and her head was tilted slightly, like a broken doll. "Lila?" She didn't answer. Then, with a weird jerking motion, her head snapped up, and her face wasn't right. Her mouth was too wide, her eyes too big, black and glistening. Not like a person's eyes, like a deer's. Her lips moved again, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. It was mine. "Caleb," it whispered. "Help me." I screamed and stumbled back toward the tent, yelling for Caleb to grab the knife from my pack. I didn't even look back. Lila was inside the tent when I got there. She was asleep, fast asleep. I shook her awake, panicked, asking where she'd gone. She just rubbed her eyes and said she'd been there the whole time. That didn't make sense. Caleb had checked. I'd checked. Her bag was empty. She wasn't there. The smell returned, stronger this time, like burnt hair and meat left in the sun. We didn't sleep after that. At sunrise, I decided we were leaving. No breakfast, no packing up the tent, just grab what we could and go. Caleb didn't argue. Lila kept asking what was going on, but I told her we'd talk later. I didn't want to scare her more than she already was. We were about halfway back to the car when we heard something behind us. Footsteps. Then running. Then, "Daddy, wait!" I stopped dead. Lila was walking beside me, holding my hand, but the voice calling from behind us, it was her voice. "Daddy, where are you going? Don't leave me." I turned, slowly. There she was again. Same dirty pink hoodie, same dark braids, standing in the middle of the trail about 50 feet behind us. Her mouth was open. Too open. Her jaw looked like it was hanging by threads. Then she ran toward us. Not like a child, like an animal. Fast and low, arms and legs moving in unnatural jerks. I grabbed both kids and ran. Full sprint. No looking back. The woods were alive with sound now. Whispers. Laughter. Something howling from far off. I don't know how long we ran. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. But we didn't stop until we saw the car. We piled in. I turned the key, and we tore out of there. Tires spitting dirt and gravel. We didn't speak the entire drive home. Later, at the gas station, I checked the trunk. Something was in our stuff. A small pile of bones wrapped in deer hide, tied together with grass and hair. I threw it into a dumpster and never told the kids. That night, I checked Lila's back. She had long, thin scratches running down her spine. Not cuts, just red lines, like she'd brushed up against brambles or something. She didn't remember anything. Not the noises, not being outside the tent. Nothing. I told my wife we'd had a rough time camping and wouldn't be doing it again. I didn't tell her about the thing in the woods. I don't go near forests anymore. Neither does Caleb. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, sure I've heard Lila's voice in the hallway, even though she's asleep in her room. A few days ago, Caleb came into my room, pale as a sheet. "Dad?" he whispered. I heard her again, outside, last night. I told him he imagined it, but I didn't sleep after that, because I heard it too. We were 5 people when we drove into the forest. 5 people with backpacks, rolled up tents, bags of trail mix, and enough firewood and beer to last 3 nights. Me, my cousin Ryan, our mutual friend Melissa, her boyfriend Jason, and Kelly, a friend of mine from work. I've gone camping a lot, but this trip never felt right from the moment we left the pavement behind and the forest swallowed the road. It started with the quiet. Not the kind of quiet that makes you relax and say, "Wow, this is peaceful." No, this was the kind of quiet that sets your teeth on edge. The trees pressed in thick and not a single bird called. No insects. No rustling of squirrels in the underbrush. Just our footsteps and breath and the occasional snap of a branch underfoot. I joked about it. Said maybe nature got sick of humans and took the week off. Nobody laughed. We hiked about 2 hours into the woods before setting up camp in a small clearing near a shallow creek. The water barely moved, just sat there like a stagnant puddle. The sun never really broke through the trees, and by the time we finished setting up the tents, the light was already dimming. It was only 4:30 in the afternoon. That first night, we lit a fire, opened some beers, and tried to force the weird tension out of the air. Melissa played music from a portable speaker, low enough to not echo, and we passed around snacks while Jason told a story about a cougar sighting near a trail a few towns over. Then the smell hit. Iron. Sharp, like pennies in your mouth. Blood. It came in sudden, like someone flipped a switch. 1 second we were joking around, the next we were gagging on the coppery stench that soaked the air. "Is that from the creek?" Kelly asked, covering her nose. "I don't think so," I said. "That smell's not natural. That's..." I didn't finish, because I realized something else. It wasn't just the smell. Everything was dead silent again. Not even the pop of the fire. Melissa turned the speaker off. Jason stood up and looked around the perimeter of the camp, his face pale. Ryan was the one who said it out loud. "Something's watching us." We all froze. He was right. That pressure, you know the feeling. Like something behind you is breathing down your neck, like a weight on your chest that you can't see. Then something screamed in the distance. It wasn't a human scream. It started low, guttural, and then rose into this high-pitched, rasping screech that made every one of us stand up like a herd of deer. It echoed through the forest, then vanished like it was never there. Melissa dropped her beer. It rolled into the fire pit and hissed against the stones. Jason laughed nervously. "Okay, so that's a thing. Nope, Ryan said. That's not any animal I've ever heard. We argued about what to do. I wanted to leave first thing in the morning. Kelly agreed. Melissa didn't want to hike back in the dark, and Jason said we were overreacting. We'll just stick close together, he said. Stay in the tents. Keep the fire going. Nothing's gonna mess with 5 people. But something did. That night, after the fire burned down and we zipped ourselves into our tents, I lay awake listening to the silence. I shared a tent with Kelly. Ryan was in his own. Melissa and Jason were together. It had to be around 2 a.m. when I first heard it. The dragging. Like someone pulling a heavy sack through leaves. It came from behind our tent and moved slowly, like it didn't care if we heard it. Kelly was asleep or pretending to be. I held my breath and listened. The dragging stopped. Then came the sniffing. Something pressed its face, or something, right against the nylon wall of the tent. I could see the silhouette. It didn't look like a bear. The proportions were all wrong. It was tall, too tall. Its arms hung low and stiff. And then it spoke. Open up! The voice sounded like Melissa, but flat, hollow, like a bad impression. I knew it wasn't her. I didn't move. Neither did Kelly. We lay there, frozen, as the voice kept repeating. Open up! Open up! Open up! The shadow moved away eventually. The rest of the night was silent. The next morning, Melissa and Jason were gone. Their tent was torn open, slashed, not unzipped. Their bags were still inside, untouched. Jason's boots were still next to the fire pit, but they were gone. We called for them for hours, hiked in every direction. No tracks, no signs of struggle. Just that smell. Blood again, faint but unmistakable, lingering in the air. There was no cell service, not even one bar. We tried Melissa's phone. Jason's. Nothing. By noon, Ryan said we needed to leave. I agreed. Kelly looked like she was going to cry. We packed up as fast as we could and started back the way we came. Except we couldn't find the trail. The path we hiked in on, it was gone. Just trees in every direction. The landmarks we passed, an old log, a rock shaped like a skull, a dead birch tree, none of them were there. Ryan started to panic. I'd never seen him like that. We chose a direction and walked. That's when the sounds started. First it was whispering, just beyond the tree line, low and unintelligible. Then it became breathing, loud, ragged, and close. At one point, we all heard Melissa again, clear as day. Guys, wait up! I found something! We turned around. She was there, about 30 feet back in the trees, but she wasn't moving right. Her arms hung limply, her head tilted too far to the side, and her mouth was wrong. It opened and opened and opened, stretching wide like her jaw was unhinged. Then she screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was the same noise from the night before, guttural and high and impossible. The trees seemed to warp with the sound, bending inward. We ran. I don't know how long we ran. Hours, days. Time didn't feel real. The forest never changed. The same trees, the same silence. The same weight in the air like a predator was right behind us. Eventually, we found a hunting shack. Just an old one-room thing with a caved-in roof and rusted tools on the walls. But it had a door. We barricaded ourselves inside as best we could and tried to rest. That night, it came back. We heard the dragging again. Then footsteps. Then it spoke with Ryan's voice. "Let me in, I'm hurt." Kelly shook her head over and over, whispering, "That's not him. That's not him." I held the axe I found by the fireplace and sat in front of the door. The voice kept coming, switching from Melissa to Jason to Ryan to Kelly, saying things like, "I'm cold, something's out here, I can see you, I'm hungry." And then, at one point it said something new, in my voice. "There's no way out." The door shook violently, but it didn't open. At dawn, it stopped. Ryan was gone. He had been sleeping against the far wall. There was no sound, no struggle, just gone. His bag was still there, his boots, but no sign of him. We left the shack and just started walking. The smell of blood followed us for hours. Eventually, somehow, we stumbled out of the woods and onto an old dirt road. A truck picked us up an hour later. We filed reports, gave statements. The rangers searched the woods. They found nothing. No sign of Melissa, Jason, or Ryan. No blood, no tracks, not even our camp. We were told we probably got turned around and imagined things, that our friends got lost and animals took the rest. But Kelly and I both heard them, saw them. That thing was not human. Something lives in that forest, something that wears your friends' voices like a mask, something that pretends, that waits, that knows you, and it still has them. We were 5 people when we entered that forest. Only 2 of us came back. There were three of us: me, my younger sister Emily, and our older sister Brooke. We went winter camping in early February, which is just asking for trouble, I know. But it made sense to us at the time. Emily was going back to school soon and needed one last escape. Brooke had just dumped this abusive piece of shit she'd been stuck with for 2 years. And me? I was in a tailspin, burned out, newly jobless, and stuck in this dead period of my life where I felt like a ghost drifting through rooms. So we thought, let's go off-grid. Let's find some place out in the woods where no one can call us. No emails, no notifications, just trees and silence and snow. We picked a chunk of state forest up in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, thousands of acres, almost no access points. We found a back entrance, a logging road that hadn't been maintained in years, and parked there. Then we hiked in about 5 miles with snowshoes and sleds to carry our gear. No trails, no other campsites, just wilderness. Untouched, buried in snow, and freezing cold. It was 10 degrees during the day, lower at night. But we'd planned for it. We had a big canvas tent, thick sleeping bags, layered clothing, and Brooke's little portable wood stove that vented out through a chimney pipe she'd rigged. The first 2 nights were nice. Quiet in a way cities never are. At night, we'd boil snow for water, sip whiskey out of old tin mugs, and sit cross-legged on sleeping pads, playing cards while the stove popped and hissed beside us. It snowed both nights, light flurries that made the forest look like it was being erased one tree at a time. The woods were silent in that way only deep winter woods can be. No animals, no wind, no sound except our voices. But everything changed on the 3rd day. It was just after lunch. I was about 100 yards from camp, gathering kindling with a hand axe. It was quiet, dead quiet, until I heard a crunch. Just one step, then nothing. I turned slowly. There was a man behind a tree, mostly hidden, about 40 feet away. He stepped out when he saw me looking. Calm, deliberate, not like he was caught, more like he wanted me to see him. He was tall, taller than me, and broad. Big shoulders under a filthy camo jacket, snow caked on his boots and in the creases of his black snow pants. His beard was wild and matted with ice. His eyes didn't stay still. They kept scanning, shifting, darting from one branch to the next. I saw him sniff the air once, like an animal. He had a shotgun. "Didn't mean to startle ya," he said, voice too casual. "Didn't think anyone else'd be out here." I stood frozen, trying to remember how to talk. My mouth was dry, tongue like sandpaper. I raised a hand slowly and nodded. "Just camping," I said. He cocked his head, curious. "We?" I paused. That word, it felt like a knife. He didn't ask, "Who are you with?" He asked, "We," like he already knew. "Yeah," I said eventually. "My sisters are at the tent." His mouth twitched into this crooked smile, yellow teeth, chapped lips. "Sisters, huh? That's real nice. Family time." He didn't say anything else, just stood there for a long second, eyes twitching between me and the tree line. Then, "Don't let the cold get ya." He turned and walked back the way he came. Didn't hurry, didn't look back. But he knew I was watching. I ran back to camp, told Emily and Brooke everything. Brooke, ever the realist, grabbed the flare gun and zipped the tent shut. Emily pulled her multi-tool from her pack and clipped it to her belt. "We need to leave," Brooke said. "I know," I told her, "but tonight's supposed to drop below 0 again. If we get turned around in the dark." "We'll keep watch," Emily said. "No one sleeps alone." We set up in shifts, 2 hours each. I took first. The forest didn't feel like it had before. It was too still, too alert, like it was waiting for something. Around 1 a.m., I saw movement, a flicker of shadow behind the tent wall. I held my breath, pressed my back to the stove for warmth. 2 soft footsteps, then silence. The tent fabric didn't move. No zippers, no voices. But I could feel someone out there. I didn't wake my sisters. What would I even say? I sat there, clutching the hatchet, sweat pouring down my back in the freezing air. At sunrise, Brooke stepped outside and found footprints. Big ones. Fresh. They circled the tent. Loops getting smaller and smaller. No boot tread. Just a vague waffle pattern, worn smooth at the heel, like cheap rubber. We broke camp in 30 minutes. Didn't pack anything we didn't need. Left behind cookware, food, even Brooke's stove. The whole hike out, we moved fast. None of us spoke. I glanced behind us every couple minutes. Noticed things that weren't there before. A branch broken the wrong way. A patch of disturbed snow that looked like someone had knelt there. 2 miles in, I saw him again. Far off, maybe 200 feet behind us, half covered in snow. Not walking, just standing. watching. I didn't say anything. At the truck, we climbed in and slammed the doors. Didn't even load our gear in the bed, just shoved what we could into the back seat and peeled out down the icy road. But 10 minutes later, we saw something that made my stomach drop. Our tracks from earlier that week were still in the snow, faint and windblown. Next to them, a second set, new ones. They started at the tree line and walked right up to the driver's door of our truck, then stopped. No return prints, no vehicle tracks, just a man walking out of the woods, standing at our truck, and then nothing. We made it to town, found a gas station and sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, just breathing. That night, we stayed in a motel, deadbolt locked, chair braced under the knob. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing faint thuds, like footsteps in the hallway. Once, I thought I saw someone outside through the peephole, just past the edge of view, but when I opened the door, there was no one there. Just a faint footprint in the snow on the walkway. One single boot print, turned toward our room. The police didn't care. We hadn't seen a crime. No license plate, no photos, nothing they could act on. I thought it would end there. It didn't. 2 weeks later, Brooke's neighbor saw a man standing in the backyard late at night, just standing in the snow, motionless. The cops came, but found nothing. 2 nights after that, Brooke woke up to find muddy boot prints in her hallway. No signs of forced entry. Emily called me crying a few days later. She said she heard someone whispering in her apartment. Not a hallucination. A voice. Low. Male. She thought it was coming from the hallway vent. I didn't want to believe them until I started noticing things too. Trash moved. A sock missing. One night, I came home and found the front door unlocked. I always lock it. Always. A week ago, I found one of those cheap waffle-soled boot prints in the snow on my fire escape. Second story. No ladders. It's not ghosts. It's not some forest spirit or shadow demon. It's a man. A real man. Flesh and blood. He was living out there. Off-grid. Watching. Waiting. And for whatever reason, we caught his eye. I don't know how he followed us. I don't know how he's finding where we live. But I know this. Some people go into the woods to get away from everything. Others go there because they don't belong anywhere else.